Okay, so obviously the rent reform bill is coming up in May. Stick to the end of this video because we're going to cover what we think is going to happen, the impact of rent reform bill with rent-to-rent HMO. If you're a landlord and you're renting to HMOs, or you're a landlord, you're renting to a family, and exactly why you should listen to us. We've been in property, well, I've been in property coming up 6 years. I've scaled a rent-to-rent HMO business, a service accommodation business. Dan is scaling a social housing business. We've dealt with a lot of tenants. We've dealt with a lot of guests, a lot of landlords, a lot of estate agents, and we can see the shift coming, and it is a big impact. So let's get straight into it. How is it right now? Let's go through tenants, so HMOs or residential. You're a buy-to-let landlord, you're renting to a family. They got the same rights, haven't they? AST contracts.
Yeah, exactly.
6 month minimum usually. So if a tenant moves in, they've got to be there for 6 months minimum.
Yeah.
Then they can hand in, a month's notice at any given point. Now, or going forward from May, is the day they move in, they could just be like, yeah, I signed that contract, but I've changed my mind. 2 months notice. That's fine if it's in peak season. People are moving about. There's a lot of people looking to move in the city. The problem that I see is Christmas time is always a bit slow anyway. People don't want to move around Christmas, or they might move back to their families for Christmas, and they don't typically move just after Christmas either. So if you move a tenant in like the end of October, and then a month later they give you a 2 months notice, that's going to be so hard to fill your room. You're at risk of voiding, from my experience, until April. Because it's so hard to fill your rooms in a HMO between November and April. I call that the low season for HMO. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely experienced that as well. And like with the students, that's definitely dying up in a number of cities now, which is, typically students wouldn't be looking in that time of the year anyway. But, even it comes sort of April and things like that. I think the impact of the student market dying down is that the professional market has a wider choice of properties now in rooms. So because all the student rooms are opening up to professionals, it's just soaking them up the market as well. So it's like the demand for professionals is decreasing essentially. And I think one thing that's gonna, you can always ask your tenant, we can't do 6 months fixed now. You can still ask your tenants, like, I'm looking for somebody who really wants to stay for 6 months. And you can try and get a gauge from, albeit you can't contract them into that. But then what's going to be really important is making sure that you get the mixes in the houses right, like the dynamic in the house, because the chances are if somebody moves in and they will give you 2 months notice straight away, it's either going to be they're not getting along with the other people that are in the property, or you're going to be hot on the maintenance because there's going to be bits and pieces around the house that they're not happy with, that are not working right or anything like that. So the conditions and the actual people within the house and creating that environment is going to be a key thing to focus on, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, me and Chris, we viewed 10 HMOs with an estate agent the other month. This was after the peak season. And I said to the agent, like, why, this is just one estate agent. Why are we viewing 10 HMOs? How is there 10 HMOs available for viewing at this point? Why are they not all gone? And she said the government have made it so much harder for international students to come to the UK. They're going to like Finland, Sweden, and going to those universities. So then you've got all of these HMO rooms not being taken by international students. That was the bulk of the market. So landlords are struggling because estate agents can't fill the rooms anymore. So that's a big problem for estate agents. I bet that's affected their revenue. This is a huge problem. The government have really truly messed up there. Why did they make it so much, what's the bigger picture? Why did they make it so much harder for international students to come to the UK? Why? I haven't dived that deep, but we viewed 10 empty HMOs. And we made our offers and only 2 got accepted. So the landlords can accept the offers, even though they're empty, they're struggling to fill them. They can't accept the offers because they're making a loss because of their mortgage. Like the problem is huge. If you're listening, we're just mind dumping. None of this is scripted. This is how the market and how we see it. Another thing I see is the benefits of it. Like the benefits of the changes in the rent reform is if you're a family and you want to rent a house, the old way or the current way is the landlord could just give you 2 months notice at any point.
To end on your fixed period or any time after the fixed period.
Which sucks, right? So if you intend, I love this house, we want to be here for a very long time. Put yourself in their shoes, you might want to put a patio down. If the landlord's just got grass and a shed, right? But you want a pond, you want to put a nice patio down, you want to landscape the garden. You don't want to invest that sort of money for the landlord to just go, boom, 2 months notice, and you just spent $5,000 on a patio. So the benefits of families is, you can rent a place as long as you don't breach the contract. The landlord can't get you out unless they want to move back in there themselves, or they're selling the property. Which I think's amazing. That is a pure benefit. Love that.
To the to the tenants. Absolutely, yeah. It offers them long-term security, doesn't it?
I don't know. The sweetness of being a property investor residentially is so much tougher now. Mortgages are squeezed, tenant rights are stronger. Why invest residentially? I don't think it's a smart move anymore, unless you're just banking on the appreciation of the property, building wealth. But if you're doing it for cash flow, I think buy-to-let is the worst option to produce cash flow. You're so at risk of interest rates is not stable, as proven in the last 3-4 years.
It's definitely become a lot less attractive, and especially for smaller portfolio landlords, I would say, like amateurs. Or maybe they've just inherited a property or something like that. I think it makes more sense if you're a business, and you're a portfolio landlord. It still makes sense because you're in the business of that. It's something that you expect, right? You're looking at it longer term, running a tighter ship. But yeah, if you're just dabbling in property investment, it's probably not the smartest. Or like you said, cash flow. Most people get into property if they're not already in property to get cash flow, right? I don't think buy to let is definitely not the best way for cash flow.
No, it's for me. I didn't know other strategies kind of existed apart from like developments or flips, refurbs, but I didn't understand like rent to rent HMO, rent to Airbnb, lease options, and all these savvy strategies. I thought the first route was save up enough money or borrow enough money to get on the buy to let ladder. And then you're starting to creep out of the job, get an extra income stream, It's only when I started to look into that, I come across rent to rent. And I'm like, what? You can lease a property, lease it back out again, and make £600, £700, £800 profit a month without owning that. Like, let's have a look a bit into that. So that's how I got started. But when it comes to the rent reform bill, what do you see is going to happen with the rent to rent HMO market?
I think like residential landlords will be fine ultimately. I think it's just a new change. I think it's definitely going to impact the HMO market a lot more, especially even like with what we teach essentially is to go after student properties, right? They're already licensed. Landlords may be sick of their property's not performing or getting students, or it's reaching crunch time, they've not found a student horde yet to go into the property, and then we swoop in and obviously offer what we can offer and we take on the property. That's usually how it works. Now, a lot of student landlords are going to struggle, I think, now as well, because they don't have the security with those students, because the students usually they're fixed in for 12 months, right? Whereas now they can leave at any time. So what you were saying earlier about that student window, right? It's like there's a certain time period in the market where you can find students to move into your property. However, if they all move in and everything's going fine, and then a few decide to leave, you're going to really struggle, because before they were all signed into 12 months. But then if a few of those leave, how are you going to get extra students in? You're going to have to put professionals in, but then you can't get professionals out when the Renters Act comes in, right? You can't evict them. With students, there's still a bit of there's going to be something in there that suggests that if it's strictly a student household, you can ask them to leave still. What happens when you start incurring voids and things like that? It's a lot less attractive. So I think there's going to be ultimately more student landlords and HMO landlords are going to be looking for alternatives such as company lets or working with social housing providers and things like that. I think that's what's going to happen, and there's going to be a lot of more empty HMOs as the student market continues to die down.
I think it's going to go down more the Airbnb route. So landlords will, if they've got an empty house, it's like, okay, Airbnb is booming. People want more flexibility, not be locked into one room for 6 months. It's like, no, this is, I like the location, but I've seen a nice room in that house down the road. I think it's exactly like the workplace. So if you want to go to work, you got to book a desk now. It's like nothing's personalised, which is a shame. And I think HMO will go down the same market. Is if you want a room for 3 weeks, you book a room. Because I think if you're a landlord of a student property, let's say you've got 5 bedrooms, estate agents cannot fill those rooms. They're really struggling. Hence why we viewed 10 in September when they should have all been gone. We're usually fighting for the viewings. And they're in abundance. So estate agents can't fill those rooms for landlords anymore. So landlords, their hand is going to be forced to move. And the only other option is, like you say, social housing. Find a social housing provider or chuck it on Airbnb. Because you can't just wait for a student. And the market is abundant, and there's not that many working professionals that are willing to move to your house because there's 600 more properties.
And I think the higher standard HMOs are still going to be all right. These ones that, a lot of developers that we're working with now is that they're putting in kitchenettes, they're all en suites, they're effectively like self-contained units almost. And those will always do well because they're going to be priced, reasonably high, but they offer a really good standard of living. It's going to be the sort of mid-tier or definitely like the lower tier HMOs, they're just gonna, I don't see how they're gonna perform at all, really.
Yeah.
A lot will end up probably going to the council, working with the council, getting people in on LHA rates and things like that.
So if you don't know what HMO is, a HMO is where a property has multiple rooms and there's individuals renting a room and they share the communal spaces. That is a HMO, house of multiple occupancy. And there's thousands of them in cities, you know, mainly for the student accommodation built around universities. But like I mentioned earlier, is the government have made it so much harder for students to come to the UK. There's so many voids now, so many empty rooms. So the market is going to see a big shift this year.
Yeah.
The rent reform bill is even affecting that even more.
Yeah.
So rent to rent HMO, and HMO in itself is not the stable ship it once used to be, which is a shame. It was a, you know, you use that business model to get started. I used it. I wanted stable income to replace my stable income. Don't get me wrong, I still think it's good. It's just you have to be so on it now with, you know, your offer, your margin has to be like 1.5 to 2 rooms empty, and then you're breaking even.
Yeah.
But that's such a big margin that the landlords possibly can't come down to that because their mortgage is squeezed. So
yeah,
it's an absolute butterfly effect of what the government have done. Yeah, so we'll see how that pans out, but it's not a stable ship.
The only good thing is obviously that we can test demand with dummy ads, make sure that we are in a location where we feel confident that, you know, people are going to take the rooms. And like you said, we need to be a lot stricter on our offers to make sure that there is like 2 rooms worth of profit, you know, to factor in that we are going to experience voids at certain points, and there may be more tenant churn now that, you know, they can up and leave after 2 months whenever they like, sort of thing. And just vetting the tenants as well, much more asking, inquiring how long they're planning to stay for, making sure everything's running smoothly in the house, make sure you think that the people are going to get on, you know, that's going to be key.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's not just referencing as standard, it's talking to them. You know, if I was to rent this room to you, almost like an application, do you intend on staying for, like, you know, this is October, I don't want you moving out in like January, February. I know you can. Is that your intention?
Yeah.
You know, I need to look after my house.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's they could lie.
Well, yeah, exactly that. Yeah, it's a tricky market to navigate now. It's going to be a lot of change, but I think come like 3-6 months down the line when it's all into effect, things will settle down and we'll just be back in the normal swing of things.
100%.
And something will have to happen with the market. Like, it will pick up. I don't know how. They've got to do something about the students, because otherwise, what's going to happen? Universities just shut up, and I don't know.
You know, worst case scenario, you've got all of these HMOs. Are they going to be sold and then turned back to just a residential? Is that that much?
Back.
You know, but they're very expensive properties. Very expensive properties. Is there that many people that are looking to buy? You know, you go to Brighton, you go to Bristol. There's streets and streets and streets of just HMOs. That's a lot of empty properties.
Yeah.
A lot of properties for sale. Would that possibly even crash the market? Is that their intention? Oh, we've just discovered the next crash. 2027 property crash. You heard it here first.
Yeah, I think there will be a lot of HMOs that do flood the market, but developers are going to be able to get a good chance to get in, and ultimately what they'll do is they'll make them higher spec. They'll reduce the rooms or create the space. They'll do en suites. They'll do like tea stations, kitchenettes, and that will draw up more demand. They'll be able to soak up more demand doing that.
Yeah, I think social housing is a solid answer to that, because there's always going to be a constant need for people needing care. You're proof of that. Your business, you're going from 10 to 20 this year, aren't you?
Yeah, that's the plan.
10 to 20 properties. That market will never dry up, and never is a strong word, but there's always going to be people needing care everywhere.
Yeah.
Not just in like key locations. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And councils can't fill that gap.
Yeah, there's a huge demand for it. There always will be, and you know that's an unfortunate scenario. But you know, we're a business. There's an opportunity there to help and partner with providers and find them the right properties that they need. And it's very attractive to landlords now with all these laws coming around, like residential tenancies and stuff like that. It takes them out of that. It takes them out of the Housing Act, so they have a bit more control. You know, if you've got a commercial tenancy and we don't pay the rent, then the property goes back. We don't have rights like, you know, the residential tenants do. So it's a lot more attractive to landlords in that way, and you know that's essentially how we sell it to them.
Yeah, they're very protected.
Exactly.
And backed by a solid, you know, flow of proof.
Yeah.
You've got the council paying the provider paying multiple landlords for their properties, paying you consistent income on time every time. So it's a consistent reassurance all the way down, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially with like HMOs, it's like, imagine the relief for a landlord if you could say you've got, you know, they've got a 7-bed HMO, like we've just taken on an 8-bed, right? And the landlords were either going to have to deal with 8 individual tenancies, so that's 8 individual personalities, 8 rents that they need to rely on coming in that they may need to chase, 8 different people causing different issues within the property and everything like that, right? Or they can go with a company, they get one tenancy, they're direct to one person who's in control and responsible for that, and the property, they're guaranteed a term, essentially. So on this one we did a 5-year term. Otherwise they got 8 people in there that could move out within 2 months notice, and they've got constant churn, constant back and forth. Like, it's such a relief to a landlord to be able to have one tenant take the thing on for the entire duration.
Guaranteed rent. It's going to be paid on the 1st every month. You'll wake up on the 1st and the money's in there.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
Peace of mind. Now, how much is peace of mind worth? That's ultimately what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Do you want peace of mind? Cool. Then it might cost you.
Yeah.
You can manage the whole property yourself and do all of the legwork, and you'll make better margin for sure, because you're taking out someone who can take that pain away from you. But if you want peace of mind and you want more passive, then ultimately you got to pay for that.
Yeah, because there's
court time. I think it's to free up the court time.
There's court times. There's changes around, obviously, like the conditions of properties as well, like that AAB's law. What else is there? No rent in advance, so that's going to screw people over as well. Like, it's going to reduce the ability for people with maybe like that have a credit issue, or they've only just gone into a job. Like, landlords are going to get so much more stricter on referencing, because they're not going to want to chance it. Yeah, exactly. Because there's going to be, also the other thing is, it's not going to be as easy to get people out even when they stop paying rent. There's going to be more opportunities to pay the rent back over a longer period of time, and like, it's on the landlord then to float their mortgage, essentially, because they're not getting paid the rent, but they can't get the person out. So they're going to be very strict on referencing, and people that may have a blip in their past, like, are landlords going to chance it on them? Probably not. You're not going to see people giving it the benefit of the doubt as much, or having the option to say, okay, well, I'll take a punt on you, see if it pans out. You seem like a nice guy, Kenny. I want to go with you, but you've got that few issues there, so I'm going to ask for some rent up front. Can you do that?
Sorry, that's illegal. You can't ask me that.
Exactly, yeah, you can't do that anymore. Even if you were to come to me and say, I'll pay you X amount. In fact, you may actually be able to do that, but you can't ask for it as the landlord. You can't say the condition of this tenancy is you pay X amount up front.
It's almost like they're trying to, I'm putting my tinfoil hat on, but it's like they are trying to force this market to crash so quickly. You think of everything they've changed, it's drastic. Interest rates, right, squeeze the profit margins on the landlord. Rent reform bill, making it harder for international students to come to the UK. Stricter regulations on properties.
Yeah, like, the APC stuff, even though they pushed that back now.
It's like everything to tire a landlord out.
Yeah, and then you've got the banks buying up loads of properties, like Lloyd's trying to become the biggest landlord in the UK.
Is when you put your tinfoil hat on, you're like, I see you.
Yeah.
I always try and look at the bigger picture, like, why have they done that? That's not, it's to free up the court time. It is and it isn't.
Yeah, it's probably a larger motive than that. But yeah, that's definitely a part of it. Yeah. It's what they say it's for, and then it's what's the deeper root cause, what's the bigger plan. How does it affect us trying to get company lets then? Do you think?
I think it makes it easier, makes it more attractive for landlords for the reasons you just covered. They're under a lot of stress, voids, inconsistencies. Even just when you look at the market from people in jobs, are their jobs safe with AI advancing so quickly? I think I read something yesterday, it's 5,000 jobs since Christmas have been laid off. Their jobs have been replaced by AI. Yeah. And it's like, how safe are tenants' income now? I think it's going to be easier, but the tricky part about it is when we make our offer, we got our margin needs to be well and truly protected. Yeah. Because we own the risk. That the landlord currently has. So
it's a bit. It's going to affect the entire market, isn't it? I think when I first started rent to rent, the whole thing was trying to find a landlord in a painful situation. Try and find the student landlord who didn't manage to fill his HMO this year round. Or he's getting panicked because it's leading up to that time where you know he's going to miss the cut-off, right? Yeah. And you have to be on it and you have to try and get it. Whereas now I feel like
it's all year round.
You can find a painful landlord anywhere,
Knock on your next door neighbour.
It's like now what you're telling them, it's like music to their ears. It's like, they are considering that because they're already in pain. Yeah, 100%. Especially ones, like I said, that aren't more like commercially minded, or they have a big business around this. They've been in the game a long time. They've been through multiple of these changes. These big law changes and tenancy acts and stuff like that. Yeah. Like what was it in 2004 when they made the if you're like a private landlord landlord, you weren't through a limited company, that the mortgage was no longer deductible. Like, what a huge thing. I think that is probably such a larger thing.
Oh, 100%. That's another thing to add to the list of why do tinfoil hat, why they're...
Yeah.
Because now the whole income, the revenue is taxed.
Yeah.
As opposed to the profit.
Yeah.
They've screwed landlords.
Yeah.
They're trying to crash the market.
I think, yeah, maybe.
100%. Because wealth, rich get richer and crashes.
Yeah, because they come in and scoop everything up.
Yeah, I spoke to one of the landlords I work with, and he's a very wealthy guy. I said to him, I was like, if you go back to my age, knowing what you know now, what would you do? He said, I wouldn't buy anything residential. I'd be working with people like you, businesses, because I'm more protected through the contract. You're a lot easier to deal with because you're trying to grow your business. You understand income, you understand risk, you understand responsibility. This is everything he was saying.
Yeah.
He said he had one tenant, the washing machine just broke, wasn't working. So instead of contacting him and his team, they went out and bought a top of the range washing machine and then just deducted it from the rent. And he was like, it could have just been a £40 part with a £70 call out or whatever. He said they went and bought a £700 washing machine and then just deducted it from the rent without even informing her.
That was their letting agents?
No, that was the tenant.
Oh, the tenant?
His tenant of one of his properties.
Oh.
Yeah, so he's selling everything residential and he's buying pubs, he's buying commercial units to rent out to businesses.
Yeah.
That's the transition. And he's the type of guy that would, see the writing on the wall before the writing's on the wall. That's why he's transitioning.
Yeah.
Before everything gets completely destroyed.
Yeah, I think that does make a lot of sense. I think, personally, if I was to invest in property now, it would be like commercial.
Yeah.
Or something that I know that I could have a commercial tenant at the end, whether
Definitely.
that was a provider or whatever. But yeah, that is the way forward.
Sorry about the doom and gloom, guys. But the market, you might have liked this, you might have not agreed, that's absolutely fine. We're just talking our opinions from experience. But yeah, the market is uncertain this year. The rent reform bill is just one of the reasons why. And basically there's no clear answer.
Yeah.
You just got to tighten your referencing process. If you're a landlord, if you're looking at buying a property, make sure you're doing the market research on that area. Look at voids, go on spare room, look at how many people are looking to rent a room as opposed to how many rooms are there available. Let's say there's 300 rooms available but only 50 people looking. You don't buy a property in that area. When you know the referencing process, you can become a better property investor as opposed to just, that house looks nice. I'd love to own that. Let's buy that one. Don't be that person. Don't be Bob. I mean, you're focusing on social housing. I'm focusing on Airbnb.
Yeah.
Both of them aren't residential.
Yes.
Do you feel at risk?
No. Yeah, I mean, you obviously need to do due diligence on your guests that you would go in and stuff like that as much as you can.
Mainly contractors.
Yeah. And then we always make sure that the providers have healthy accounts. They're established. A lot of the ones that we work with, we like to actually see their current services as well. So if we can get into the property, when we're initially onboarding them and having a conversation about trying to find them a property, we're always like, well, is there a property nearby that we can come and visit so we can see how they're taking care of that? Get landlord references as well to make sure that the rent's been paid, check their accounts, make sure they've got a healthy bank balance, and where they're getting their referrals from. So you've got to do due diligence on your provider. It can be just like a tenant. You need to still reference them, right?
Yeah, exactly that. Whoever your end user is, run heavy referencing. And if you're here to get up to date with the rent reform bill, that's the ultimate answer, is be very strict with your referencing. But also, if you're a buy-to-let and you're going down the residential end user, then talk to the potential tenant. What is their intentions of taking that room, renting that property? How long do they want to be there? Get to know them. Don't just be like, you pass referencing, because 2 months later, you might be doing the whole process again. And it might be mid-December. And then you're going to void till March. Interesting times. I hope this video helped. See you guys soon.